What's up guys, welcome to Wasted Space, and we're back in Space Engineers, and I fancy doing a video talking a bit about voxel hands and underground building, because it's something I've been doing quite a lot of on the stream of late. Got a few cool projects on the go that revolve pretty much exclusively around that idea. And it's also something that I think a lot of people steer away from as being a bit too fiddly, a bit too difficult, or just don't understand how it really works. Now of course this is a creative mode thing. I'm going to be doing both voxel hands and a couple of other bits that only work in creative. But at the same time, I know a lot of you guys do still play in creative just to come up with cool looking stuff or mess around with concepts, so figured this might still be handy. So to kick off with, I found myself a nice spot on the side of this lake here, really pretty, and we're going to dig or make ourselves an entrance to an underground base in the wall of this sort of, not really a cliff face, in the side of this hill. So first thing first, I should probably talk a bit about the actual tools themselves and how to get at them, what the controls are. So hit G, and at the bottom of the G menu you have a voxel hands sort of group, and in here we got these 5. Now I will admit, number 5 here, terrain auto level, is pretty useless these days. It used to be really good on asteroids. Now not so much, but for completeness it's down on the bar, and basically these are just all different variants of shape of the same tool. So now we got them down there, obviously we get them out, and the first time you get it out it looks a bit like this. It's moving around all jerky and weird, and that's because you've got some of the settings on that aren't ideal for using these. So if we hit Control H, which is a new control, not listed in any of the menus at the moment for some reason, you'll get this menu up and you can start playing with some of the settings. So the first one to talk about is this snap to voxel grid. So the snap to voxel grid basically makes it move around jerky like you can see it, and what it's doing is aligning with a hidden grid that all of the voxels on the planet are made out of. The problem with this grid is if we stick a station block down, and we might as well stick this down somewhere where it's lining up with where our entranceway could be, so it's a bit suitably steep, and if we double tap B just to make sure that it's aligned with gravity, make sure it's perfectly level, go and find a place to just slap that down, and then go back to this voxel tool. You kind of imagine that this sort of jerkiness would help you line it up with the blocks, but 99% of the time it doesn't quite line up right, and that's because you're not lining up with a block grid, you're lining up with a voxel grid. So you can see none of these are really getting it perfect. They're all just a little bit off position. So first thing to do, turn the snap to voxel grid off, and then you get this nice smooth movement, goes wherever you want. Then finally we've got projector voxel. This is, well, it does what it says it does, so you can see that's now literally on the voxel we're looking at. This is really only useful for painting, like rechanging the materials that you're looking at, but we'll cover that a bit later. And for the most part you want this turned off, you want freeze physics turned off, and you want transparency and distance, which do pretty much what you'd expect them to be left to pretty much the defaults. Those are the easiest ones to work with. And then finally at the bottom we've got our shape settings, and these again do what you expect them to. They change the size of the block we've got. So that's all well and good. Let's get started with building this underground sort of entranceway. I'm not going to build the whole base obviously, just to demonstrate what exactly I'm doing and how there's certain tricks you can do to help you out. So if we go down here and we start building out these blocks, we're going to encounter that problem that everyone's going to be familiar with. Eventually we get to the point where the ground's in the way of us placing any more. And in this case, it's actually done so quite neatly. It looks all right, but it's not uncommon to end up with, let's drag it out. In fact, it's being very friendly with me today, but to get that sort of strange look where all of a sudden you get this bit here, where the ground's changed shape enough that it won't place anymore. And what I suggest you do to get around this, and generally this is what I suggest you do with voxel building as a whole, is if we hit F7, which will put us into spectator mode but center us over our character, and this is a really useless camera mode, so you can control the character from a static POV or whatever, strange, but then hit F8. That gives us control over that camera. So we've centered it over our character. Whoops, you see, this is a good reason why you want to center. Moved way too quickly. So we've hit F7 to center us, and then F8, it'll sort of kind of release the spectator camera, which is what we're in here. When you're in this camera, using the mouse wheel will speed up and slow down how fast you move, and Control plus the mouse wheel will change your mouse sensitivity. It's worth mentioning that because sometimes you'll be copy-pasting or doing something in Spectator, not realizing that actually you're changing the mouse sensitivity at the same time. Anyway, what we're going to do to continue this is actually go underground. And you'll notice as soon as we do so, there's nothing here. It's like the ground doesn't exist. And that's pretty much because it doesn't exist. The way Space Engineers does the terrain is it only exists on the surface. So it's only existing right here, and everything underneath here we can actually build in to the point where I can go and create a new station and place it down here and build off of it. And this is kind of what a lot of this is going to revolve around, the ability to go and build underground first. So if we come up to this edge here, you'll notice we can't actually build on that surface. And that's because this surface isn't completely submerged. The one on the bottom is fine, and we can continue out from here, no problem. But on the sides, it's kind of just sticking out the top. So the solution to this is actually to go and add a little bit of material. But seeing as we're going to be removing this later, we don't have to do this neat or anything like that. We can just slap a bit of sand, apparently, down over the top here to cover up that little edge. And as soon as we do so, we can now go back under, and you can see I can now build off of this. So let's just lay out a quick sort of entrance way to an underground base. So let's imagine got a bit of a tunnel that starts off in the rock face perhaps, and then goes into sort of a metal tunnel underneath. So let's build that bit out. You can imagine maybe there'd be sort of a big doorway here. Let's in fact build out a sort of flared bit around it as if this is all solid and kind of contained. Nice secure underground bunker sort of idea. And then once we get inside, I guess it should open up into some sort of hallway chamber, which is where this is going to have all your other rooms coming off of, perhaps. That sort of idea. In the end, this is just supposed to be a bit of an example. And in this room, maybe it'd be cool to have most of the walls be bare rock, but maybe this back wall here should be blocks instead. So drag that out there. And then finally, let's get some pillars to hold the ceiling up. Of course, this is all underground at the moment. There isn't a ceiling yet. That will come when we cut it out, but you can start to get the idea of what I'm talking about. So finally, kind of assume we've built our base underground. And one of the other things you can do with this trick, which is kind of nice, is you can actually go and like stick reactors, for example, literally submerged underneath blocks and so on, really well hidden, or use it like power lines. So you can go underground and actually connect bases together by running blocks under the ground using this sort of spectator camera technique. But anyway, we've built something simple, but simple enough to demonstrate what I'm talking about. And the next step is going to be cutting this out, and kind of why cutting it out rather than adding the material is better. So the first step is going to be to open up this sort of tunnel bit. And for this, I'm going to use the circle. And I'm basically just going to line myself up with where we want the doorway to be and try and get myself traveling sort of in a nice, smooth, straight path for where we want it. And that's looking pretty perfect, even without the crosshair. So perhaps start there, and I'm just literally just going to hold down right click and drive forward until we can see the entrance of that tunnel again, and then I'm going to stop. And what we've got is a lovely smooth looking entrance way to our tunnel there. What we could also do now to kind of tidy things up is perhaps add blocks along the edge, or take the square voxel tool, this one, and start filling in along the sides here. Now, at the moment it's on sand, so if you want to change the material, it's the square brackets. And unfortunately, there is no rhyme or reason to the order they're in. There is no way of picking up the color of what you're looking at. You've unfortunately just got to learn which ones are which. And in this case, we are looking for the one called stone there that has no icon picture at all, and for some reason is a different stone to stone 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, which are also in the list. And you could just go along the sides perhaps, fill in the missing bit, and of course this does take a bit of patience, but the end results end up looking really cool and kind of unique because you can't achieve this any other way. So just as an example, you could fill that along the edge and it would all be looking pretty cool at this point. Next up is the easiest bit of the lot, which is opening up this tunnel. So let's get the square out. You can imagine how easy this is going to be. Square out, line up vaguely. Because we've got blocks on all sides, we don't even have to be particularly precise with this. We can just make sure that we've removed enough to go down to the room. And you can see from outside, because we were inside the blocks, it's actually, we go into the side of the box, you can see sort of the bit we removed is actually contained within the edge of the blocks now. It's not visible from inside, but is visible from outside, a bit like that. And if you really wanted to fill that in, you could do so by coming back in and just covering it back over, but it's not important. So finally, we've got this big room in the center, and obviously I'm going to time-lapse a bit of this because this is going to take a little while to open out. But you can start to get an idea of why it's kind of better to do it this way round rather than the other way around. You can imagine trying to add the material around this building to make it look convincing, or vice versa, cutting out a big hole and then building your rooms in it, which leaves these sort of gaps and bits that you weren't intending. While you can do it that way, this way allows you to be really precise and kind of plan everything out in advance and only remove the material you need. And at the same time, because of that, get some kind of funky effects out of it too. So what I'm going to do here is, as I said, switch to sort of sped up footage just to finish off this room, but I'm being very slow and I'm carefully sort of aligning the ceiling height in particular. You can use the edge of the box to kind of see how intersecting it is. If you get that just right, just going along, right-clicking once rather than trying to drag, because that's very easy to lose control, and remembering that you've got control over the speed you're moving at on your mouse wheel. So if you need to slow things down to get a bit more precision, that's easily done as well. So let's go and time-lapse the rest of this. So having cleared this out, you can start to get the idea of what I'm talking about with some of the effects you can achieve with kind of underground rooms that look like they were intended, basically, and don't take up any extra space, but still allow you to kind of include blocks in the walls and have them overlap really nicely. The final thing I'll do before showing you kind of, because of course this has been a quick demonstration rather than really what I would do long term in order to make things cool, but take a lot more time over bits of this. But just finally, I'll give you an idea of some of the other tricks you can do with this that just aren't achievable without the voxel hands. So I've got the sort of, the sphere tool out, and I'm kind of lining myself up with the top of this pillar here. And I'm just trying to cut a hole around the top of it. That's pretty good, that one there. And the idea here is I'm going to fill this up with some lights and then fill it back in again to some extent. So we're going to go quite high up here. Maybe, can I get one block higher? Nah. We go quite high up there. Hopefully I've got lights on my bars already. There we go. And the idea is we're just going to add the lights, couple up here at the top, and then fill some of that stone back in. So with the block, we can, sort of the square one, we can see if I get the right height, kind of fill in around the lights, a bit like that. And hopefully, we're going to probably need to change the light settings because they tend to default to some pretty extreme weirdness at the moment. Get a pretty cool effect out of it. So where's anything with a control panel on it? I don't care what it is. Get these, yeah, it's the massive radius that they start off with kind of ruins this sort of lighting effect. If we turn that down all a bit, turn our torches off, you can start to see what I mean about effects that you just wouldn't be able to achieve with standard blocks. You get this really cool shadow there, probably a bit cooler if it wasn't with this color blocks. But you can start to see what I mean, even from something really quickly put together like that. So this map wasn't a coincidence, because as I'm sure some of you noticed, there is a few beacons around that are kind of giving away things, and that's because I picked this map intentionally, because this is where I can now demonstrate what this could look like if you spent some time on it. So I'm going to switch to Spectator, and we'll start off with the one that's over here. So we start with the entrance, and these are some sort of underground bases that I'd started working on the stream with Blinky and Mac, and they aren't quite finished yet, but enough that you can start to get an idea of the sort of things you can achieve. So down here by the entrance, you can see that we've got a sort of secret tunnel behind the tree, and this goes on for quite a while, perhaps a little too long. I was getting a bit over exuberant. And then ends with sort of one of the first things I'm talking about, with the sort of thing you can achieve like this that you just can't achieve otherwise. Kind of diagonal mounted doorway. And through here, get the lights off, come into the main area. So big pit down underneath us that drops away with kind of a jump challenge in it. Big arching ceilings, and you can kind of see what I mean about some of the effects. Obviously this takes a little bit longer to put together when you're going to this sort of level, but some of the effects you can achieve just by doing this in a way that's kind of different and cool. In particular, so I'll just give you a quick tour around. This is our reactor room, kind of all gnarly and rock-based, and you can do funky things like up here. The only reason that's yellow, this is all aesthetic, it's not connected up yet. But you can see that I've just literally hidden a cargo container in the ceiling, and that makes it all look kind of realistic. Down these sort of tight corridors through here. I have to keep turning the light on and off because the Spectator light's really quite bright, and into some of the lighting effects you can do underground because it's so dark are kind of funky as well. But this, I don't even know what this is, some sort of cryopod room with green freaky lighting. But finally, and the final sort of best demonstration of what I'm talking about, is if I go out this wall, you can see the area I'm working on, which hasn't even been cut out yet. I'm doing all of this work for this series of rooms underground first, and then I can cut it out in a way that looks really cool, perhaps keep some of this pipe work kind of submerged around don't even know what this is supposed to be. Just supposed to look cool, really. Or, and best example of this is over this direction. What happens when you start mixing different types of terrain together? So this is Blinky's work over in the corner, but I think this looks absolutely awesome. We've got a light kind of hidden in the floor over here and covered up a bit to give this sort of orange glow. And then he's used the alien grass to make it look like we've got some sort of underground growth thing. And you can see how, again, all of this would have been next to impossible if you'd been trying to add material to make it look like this. It would have taken you ages. However, removing material to make it look like this is way, way easier. So I think that's about all that needs to be mentioned. Quite like the glow sticks at the bottom of the pit down there. I guess the final thing we can do is just back away from this one here, give you an idea of what it looks like laid out underground as you back off, because they do tend to look pretty cool from this point of view. And perhaps, just as an example, you can see a power line in progress down there. As a quick example, let's dive across to Mac's base, the one he was building, which is the other side. Top secret base not here, to give you just an idea of the different effects you can achieve as well, because his is slightly different. He's gone for a much more open feeling inside, but using the same sort of techniques. So if we come underneath here, again, you start to get the idea of how it was all put together and some of the effects you can achieve by including bits of rock into your designs rather than just having it purely something where it's blocks underground, which is kind of boring. Final bit, as you come around here, and it opens out over this big sort of chasm area. Really, really cool. I will say, hope you like this one, guys. Really different, but I love building with these voxel hands. You know, right since the planet surface map, I've really had good fun with these voxel hands and manipulating the terrain to fit what I'm doing. And I figured so many people seem kind of not afraid of doing it, but just confused by how it all works. So maybe this helps a bit. There's definitely a lot more to it than this. It's very difficult to go through everything in one video and remember everything for one video. So ask some questions down below if there's anything you feel I've missed, or perhaps if I need to follow up and go into more detail in some areas or do some demonstrations of some other bits of things. Either way, hope you enjoyed this one, guys. If you did, please hit like, please hit subscribe. It does really help me in the channel out. And if you didn't like it, dislike button's down there, you know where it is. But please also hit me up in the comments, let me know what you didn't like and how I can improve. So thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time.